I came up with the wild idea that we could just sell our house and get in the car and drive off into the sunset. And Simon gulped and went, "Oh dear, I think there's something to that."
Hey, I'm Simon.
And I'm Bronwyn.
And this is a video to try and capture something of our journey from being city dwellers to country folk. We both started out our lives living in cities. I was born in Wellington.
And I'm a West Aucklander.
My family moved up from Wellington to Auckland, also West Auckland. And I guess we met and fell in love and got married, and both were quite happy to leave Auckland. We went overseas for a bit.
Sorry, Auckland, but it just wasn't happening for us.
So we thought. We came back from overseas and we moved to Wellington. I worked there for a few years, but that job actually finished. I was made redundant, and the next job that opened up was in Auckland again. So against our wishes, we moved back. I had a great job. We bought a house together. We had 3 young kids, and we're probably there for about 6-7 years.
I was staying at home with the kids once we had kids. That was probably a little bit countercultural for living in East Auckland at that stage.
Yeah, very much. Things kind of started closing out for us. The job that we moved up for, the culture changed to a point where I didn't feel like it was somewhere that I could be anymore and still put time and effort into my family. The more we hung out with the city mentality, the more it was starting to rub off on us. All conversations tended towards money and property. And we'd already decided that we didn't want to live for money, and therefore we weren't particularly interested in having a lot of property. A house to live in is fantastic, but I don't want 10.
Oh, well, we could be flexible on that.
It just felt strange to start parroting what everyone else was saying, knowing that these words are coming out of my mouth, but that's not what I want to be about. I was aware I didn't want to become like...
An Aucklander.
No, I didn't want to become an Aucklander again. I was happy to get out of that and to be somebody different. It was either you work hard, you make a lot of money, you don't see your family, and you buy a property and you have expensive holidays. Or you don't work so much, you have less money, you don't have all the fancy toys, but you get to see your family a lot.
Yeah, so we kind of opted for experiences over stuff. And to be fair, we still have a lot of stuff. It just kind of accumulates even when you're not trying to,
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy how we spend, I don't know, maybe 48 weeks a year in the city working hard, and then we get 4 weeks holiday when we just all rush off to the beach or go to Batches or wherever we can to have a fun time. I remember saying to Simon, we've got this all the wrong way around. We should be living at the beach for 48 weeks a year and then rush to the city for a cool city break. And that's kind of what we'd like to do a little bit more. Enjoy the best parts of the city when we're in the city. Go do all the cool stuff that you never have time to do when you have to live and work there. And then make the most of the country day to day. So we were sitting around on the couch and spitballing. I came up with the wild idea that we could just sell our house and get in the car and drive off into the sunset. And Simon gulped and went, "Oh dear, I think there's something to that."
I instantly knew that it was true and real and going to happen, and there was nothing in me which was okay with that. The idea of quitting a good job, which was well paid, and not having a job to go on to was really scary.
Within a couple of months, I think the idea had settled in and we were selling our share of the house and packing up and putting a lot of our belongings into storage. We did give a lot of stuff away at that stage. And then whatever we could fit in the car, including the kids, we took and we hit the road.
It took 3 months to drive around, just looking at the country on this great big road trip. It was awesome.
Yeah, and it was amazing for the kids. Our youngest was 5 years old, our middle kid was 7, just turned 7, and our eldest was 8, and they just had a ball.
Yeah, so this was in New Zealand, probably mid-autumn, and so we tented and stayed in campgrounds, and we literally just covered large chunks of the country that we thought we might want to live in. I can remember I think our criteria were it had to be East Coast because it rains less the New Zealand
Or
East
at
Coast.
least north facing maybe, or something.
And north facing, and we wanted to be by the beach. So we sat down with a map one evening and we literally marked off all the places which were east coast, north facing and coastal. And I think we went to all of them.
We set off heading north from Auckland and had a good look around Northland and the far north, and we nearly got to the turn off to where we now live, and at that point Simon freaked out and said, "This is far enough, we can't go any further north than this."
It was so isolated, it was so remote. It felt like we had literally fallen off the back end of the earth. I was way away from people and from industry. Like, I work as an engineer, and you always end up in industrial areas because that's where the factories are, and there wasn't a factory in sight. I was so out of my depth. Very surreal, very challenging.
And I was happy just to keep going north. I think we would have ended up in the northern hemisphere had I had my way. So we headed down to the Coromandel, and then we carried on down through Whakatane. At that point I think we just made a beeline for Wellington because we were hitting slightly colder areas of the country, and we wanted somewhere warm.
Actually, yeah, that was a definite requirement because we tried the top of the South Island, which I think boasts the most sunlight hours in the country every year, but it also happens to be south, so it's cold. And so it was a beautiful spot down in Nelson and just out of Nelson, but man, it was cold. And coming from Auckland, which is definitely subtropical, we noticed the temperature change.
It was very, very tempting to stay in the north of the South Island. It's absolutely stunning. Came in second place after Northland, simply because of the lack of warmth, and the housing down there, what we could afford wouldn't have been as good, so we would have felt the cold.
That's an understatement. For the same price as what we could get a nice house for up in Northland, I think we got like 100-year-old farmhouse, missing floorboards, freezing cold, drafty, no carpets, just a dive, really. We were partially priced out of Nelson and partially frozen out.
We also wanted to keep our mortgage very small because we wanted to have reduced work hours and more time with our kids and friends.
After the South Island and the revelation that it was both too pricey and too cold, we took stock and decided that Northland was probably the place we were likely to find what we were looking for. So we headed back up country and decided that we were going to start getting down into the details, start seriously looking at areas and schools and houses and things. So we stayed in a campground, which was a challenge because it was a kind of a one-bedroom and combined living area / bunk room for the kids. There was no kitchen, there was no bathroom, so we'd have to go and use the combined toilet facilities, etc. for the whole campground. And we managed to live there for 6 weeks while we school hunted and drove all around the place trying to find houses, etc. To be honest, I think we probably got a bit stuck there because nothing really happened for us.
So at that point I called Let's Go. We'd been in touch with a property manager in a beautiful place called Taupo Bay. She had something that wasn't particularly appropriate for us, but I said, let's just jump in the car, pack up and go, and we'll go see her in person. Transpired that she did in fact have a place which was really appropriate for our family of 5, and it was affordable. So we started renting in Taupo Bay based on the fact that we really liked the primary school which was close to it.
It worked out really well. The kids caught the school bus, went to the local school, which was really not very far away, and they'd be dropped off again at about 3:30. So we had the kids taken care of, and we had hours to ourselves each day for probably 2.5, 3 months, which sounds idyllic because it's the most beautiful beach, it's a quiet community, and it was probably the most miserable I've ever been, which is ridiculous, but it really was. I was unemployed, I didn't feel like I was pulling my weight, we couldn't find a house and we were eating into our savings. It was hugely challenging for me, and so it's probably the closest I've ever come to depression in what should have been the most idyllic time of our lives ever. I didn't have to work, we had savings from selling the house. The kids were happy in their new school, my wife loved the beach and the time she got to spend with the kids. It should have been great. But yeah, I struggled every single day While we were staying in Taupo Bay, I set myself up as a design engineer. Found an advertisement for someone up in the far north looking for somebody like me. When I called them and suggested, would you consider letting me work remotely, it wasn't even an issue. So I started working for myself from home for the first time. It's been 7 years now, and it's given us a real flexibility in our lifestyles. But it very much felt to me like we were, again, stuck. This was towards the end of winter, getting into spring, and the problem is it was a beach batch. And people want to use their beach batches at Christmas because it's summer. Everyone leaves the cities and comes and stays at the beach for as long as they possibly can, and they could rent the house out for a lot more than we were paying. We needed a permanent rental.
In a nearby township called Manganui, we managed to track down a rental which suited us quite well. We jumped in the car and we went and saw the place and met this new property manager, and I think she was really taken with our kids because they were so well behaved, and she's often used to dealing with little snot rags who try to mess up the house. 40 applicants and somehow we get the rental.
Didn't hurt. There was also a few days before Christmas. We didn't have a place to stay. We were going to spend Christmas probably in a tent. And I think this poor property agent looked at our kids, thought Christmas, and just thought, I can't say no. So we got ourselves a rental, and we rented there for probably 2.5 years. So working in Manganui was really cool. My desk overlooked a harbour, which was kind of hard sometimes because I'd sit there Friday afternoon and watch kingfish, which made it very, very hard to keep working. We're 40 metres from a really nice coffee house, and I don't drink coffee. At least I didn't before we moved to Manganui, but the kids were at school, I was working for myself, and my wife was at home, so we would literally just call coffee date, and that was it. 10 minutes later we'd be sitting in one of 2 or 3 coffee houses. Just the two of us in front of a beautiful sparkling harbour, the sun shining. Again, magic.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And there were some pretty cool dudes working at the cafe. A couple of times I even sent the kids down with our mugs from home, and because they'd just toddle off down the hill, hand in our mugs. The dude would give us a couple of coffees in our mugs and the kids would walk back home. Happy Father's Day, Dad. Here's your freshly brewed coffee at a proper cafe.
So when I wasn't working, I could decide to go fishing, pack my stuff and walk to one of the best fishing spots in the country in about 15 minutes. Off this wharf we were catching amazing fish, huge trevally, snapper, kingfish. My first kingfish was fantastic. Took Jaden, my son, out every week to go fishing. He was tiny, just a little 8-year-old, catching kahawai and a huge grin on his face. Again, it was just a magic opportunity.
And our youngest, who was the little 6-year-old sitting at the wharf dissecting the fish. She's just quietly, shy little girl, pulling apart the fish, checking out what does it look like here. It was hilarious.
So that was our renting experience, really. For 2.5 years we kept looking for a house to buy, hoping to buy in that area, lovely area, friends, school, it was all going really well. And we did finally track down an awesome place to live, but it was an hour further north. Remember from our story where there was a turn-off point where Bronwyn wanted to keep going north and I couldn't do it. I literally couldn't stretch my head to go that far. We had to go that far. So we had to turn right instead of left and drive another half hour, and that's where we found the perfect house.
It was interesting. We saw a lot of amazing places in the far north. We did take our time. We wanted to find a place that we'd be happy with for a while. And when all 5 of us saw this particular place, we just all went, yes, this is what we've been waiting for.
I guess our journey finally come to an end. We'd found our place in the sun. It is north facing. It is probably equidistant from the east coast to the west coast, but it's only 10 minutes.
12. We drive safely in the far north.
So I guess it's good enough, and it's warm. It's definitely warmer.
Yeah, really grateful to get this spot.
So that's our journey. We started off as city slickers, decided that the city just really wasn't for us, and we needed to do something about it through caution and our job and our house and our friends and our family to the wind.
We do keep in touch with friends and family.
And yeah, just went on an adventure to see where we ended up. Honestly, I've never regretted it. I love working for myself. I love working remotely. I love the peace of the countryside. I love the fishing. I love the beaches. I think mostly I love the time I get to spend with my family. Up here, there's so much more flexibility.
The great neighbours, amazing people who are actually free to catch up. That was one of the things about the city. I met some really truly amazing, lovely people who had great intentions of catching up, and they were never free. Up here, if you say to someone, oh, why don't you pop round for a cuppa? They actually turn up. Who knew? It's amazing, it's awesome, I love it. Our adventure didn't end there though. Our goal in finding this place was to have a retreat, I suppose you would say, or a base, a place where we could travel from and come back to when we needed respite, I suppose, or rest, or just to have some fun in the sun. And so while we've been here, we've been looking for where to move on to. We did go to the Wellington region, Lower Hutt, for the best part of 2 years, during which time we would often come back home, say every 3 months, just to keep an eye on this place. This is very much the place we want to keep branching out from, so we're pretty keen to keep having some really cool adventures. We do like the travel. So Simon, what advice would you give to people who are thinking of escaping the city and maybe just need a little bit more confidence to do so perhaps?
I think firstly your resolve has got to be pretty good. You've got to know that living in the city really isn't what you want, because it can be hard. It's a bit of a change, mentally mostly. Country people aren't doing anything magic to survive, but they are doing things differently, and so you have to spend the time to learn that. It took me months to decompress from an uptight Aucklander to someone who could just be a little slower, a little more patient, a little happier, and a little more relaxed. And that's actually not as easy to learn as you might think. If you're prepared to put the time into it, it's totally possible and it's totally worth it. But you've got to be prepared to see the journey through. What would you say to others who would consider taking on a journey like ours?
I think it begins with marrying a guy who is happy to turn right. Because you know, you can save a whole lot of time if he's happy to turn right the first time.
Thanks, babe.
No, I'm sure we're very good for each other. I'm sure I'm racing ahead and Simon's slowing us down, so maybe we meet in the middle somewhere. But if anybody wanted to offer us a tropical island or fly us to America, say, that would be totally cool. We'd happily take you up on that.
We can do that.
Yeah, I think Simon's catching up these days.
To be fair, I want to be someone who can turn right. So the next time it comes up, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take that turn. I'm going to turn right and I'm going to throw caution to the wind and be more adventurous. Yeah, let's see where we can go.